Yeah, so welcome to our presentation, which is titled Tackling Inequalities Through Transdisciplinary Decolonial Research, with the subheading The Palestine Exception. And the three of us will be presenting different parts of this particular presentation.
Well,
Just
actually,
waiting.
Jaspo will do the whole thing to make sure that it fits within a strict limit, and then the rest of us will possibly respond to questions and comments.
Is that what you're planning to do, Jasper? Because I
Yes.
saw your email
Yeah.
earlier suggesting
We just
otherwise.
changed the plan just before you
Okay,
arrived.
all
Yeah.
good.
To keep within the time limit.
Sure.
Okay, great. Welcome everyone. I hope you had a good day at the WELS Research Day. Welcome to our talk, which is called Tackling Inequalities Through Transdisciplinary Decolonial Research, the Palestine Exception. My name is Jaspal Singh, and I'm here with my colleagues Les Levidov and Mustafa Ali. So what is the Palestine Exception? Decolonization aims to tackle inequality and enable equity by challenging and disrupting colonial thinking and structures. Many universities claim to be committed to this process and should, at the very least, reject all settler-colonial projects under international law. Israel-Palestine, however, continues to be an exception in the West. For Israel, as a colonizer in an asymmetrical power relationship with Palestine, and for Palestine as the colonized, experiencing what most countries worldwide view as a decades-long colonization and more recently, genocide. In practice, Israel's crimes have been exempted from international law, while anti-Israel stances have been exempted from free speech through demonization and censorship. At UK universities, this exceptionalism inflicts further inequalities upon those expressing solidarity with Palestine, criticizing the state of Israel for its actions, or seeking to learn more about why this issue is so exceptional. Not only does this infringe upon academic freedom and free speech, but it also prevents open discourse about the barriers to decolonization research and practice, and on why university decolonization agendas lack impact on the material consequences of settler colonialism. This open societal challenge centers the examples of Israel-Palestine to transform decolonization agendas and related research. Building on our existing activities in the Palestine Solidarity Group at the OU, it probes the forces that drive the Palestine exception as manifest in university procedures and political pressures. Our goal is to de-exceptionalize Israel-Palestine through education, partnership with other university Palestine solidarity groups and national campaigns to build a transdisciplinary decolonization research network, and finally, developing a longer-term program of research on operationalizing a transformed university agenda on decolonization. Our objectives. Our objective is the establishment of a transdisciplinary decolonization research network. By transdisciplinary, we mean framing research questions and perspectives through engagement with diverse stakeholders' perspectives in ways accountable to them, thus posing a challenge for narrow disciplinary academic expertise. This includes non-academic stakeholders, third sector organizations, and decolonization campaigns. The long-term change we seek is to challenge university decolonization strategies to do more than improve representation in the curricula. They should also address the material consequences of settler colonialism in both global and UK contexts. We seek to transform decolonization agendas towards identifying and questioning neo-colonial mindsets that pervade our institutions and policies, impacting how we conceptualize so-called progress, knowledge and development, and international law, as well as global distinctions between what is central and what is peripheral, the broader political economy, our shared environment, and our limited natural resources. De-exceptionalizing Palestine is key to this transformation. It reverses the gaze on settler-colonial projects from the West, with their own colonial legacies, to the colonized. This exposes the persistence of settler-colonial structures and their global entanglements, generating ethical grounds for pressuring institutions and governments to address and prevent the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. Within universities, we must explore how policies, procedures, and common practices are implemented differently within different contexts, and what this means for educational curricula, research council agendas, and decolonizing the university initiatives. In this connection, we have been exploring the following questions. Why is Israel-Palestine the exception on how Western democracies in particular view international law regarding the actions of settler-colonial states? Secondly, what problematic issues are surfaced by highlighting Israel's settler-colonial apartheid role and the decolonial forces seeking to disrupt that role? Thirdly, what more happens when Palestine is de-exceptionalized? That's the one, pathways to impact. To meet the OSC's objectives, our pathway to impact involves greater visibility, closer collaboration, and a stronger evidentiary foundation around how the Palestine Exception reproduces inequalities at UK universities and upholds neocolonial structures globally. Those insights will inform a joint proposal between our OSC and our external partners to clarify what a transformed university agenda on decolonization would look like and how it would be operationalized. We have already surpassed an initiate with our current activity. Initiate is within the OSC framework, sort of the first step to receiving money and funding. So we are in the build stage. We have already surpassed an initiate with our current activities with few resources. For example, the activities below have already led to impacts that we can build upon in our transdisciplinary research networks. Engaging university leadership on policy interpretation and implementation, removing constraints on electronic communication, proposing motions to our university senate and UCU, the University College Union, and providing a safer space for all staff and students to express their solidarity with Palestine. Secondly, hosting webinars on Israel-Palestine from different perspectives, including how this topic is addressed or obfuscated within Western universities. All these activities have already helped to establish our connections and make explicit diverse understandings of inequalities as described in our objective of creating a transdisciplinary decolonial research network. We furthermore will recruit and train a postdoctoral researcher following the necessary HR procedures around job descriptions, advertising, and candidate selection, onboarding the postdoc, seeking ethical approvals for the study, recruiting participants, data collection and analysis. Our data collection or gathering of data, for that we will conduct an initial qualitative study, carrying out semi-structured interviews, administrating questionnaires, and reviewing policy document to explore perspectives on, first, how UK university staff and students understand the decolonization agenda, and second, how they experience colonial legacies in university policies and practice, for instance, EDI, PREVENT, and Equalities, especially in relation to the Palestine Exception, as well as curriculum, research agendas. And thirdly, how they attempt to question those practices from decolonial perspectives, how they encounter barriers and try to overcome them both individually and collectively. And finally, we will be hosting and are hosting online and in-person workshops and themes including decolonial perspectives from various disciplines, experiences of colonial mindsets and legacies, and how higher education institutions embed the latter and how they could change their practices to promote decolonization. Okay, finally, we're almost done. So we will have those following outputs. We will create a website. We can talk about this more in the Q&A if you're interested. We will also produce an in-depth report of our qualitative study, and we will produce educational resources and knowledge exchange resources and events, facilitate knowledge exchange events. And finally, this OSC will lead into a larger external grant proposal a few years down the line. Here are some of the references, and here's the whole OSC team. You can read the names on the slide. This is a cross-faculty OSC, people from STEM, from FAST, from WELS, and PVC students. Yeah, with that being said, I would now like to open the floor to discussions and conversations. Thank you very much. Great. So if yeah, people can use the chat or just raise their hands. Azuma, please.
Thank you for the presentation. And I'm not quite sure where the question sort of fits in with what you've been presenting, but one of the things that occurs to me when you look at, particularly with the situation with Israel and Gaza at the moment, is a real mismatch, I think, to what most people are thinking and feeling and what governments or people who are in sort of public spaces are saying and doing. So, and I base that on what I think are sort of YouGov surveys that would say most people, the vast majority of people, recognize it for what it is and object strongly to governments selling arms and so on. And I think, perhaps on social media, the amount of criticism that's poured on Starmer when he stands up and says things on behalf of the British people. And I just wonder what you make of that and how that sort of feeds into any of the things, if that feeds in at all, to any of the things that you're thinking and talking about.
Thanks, Azuma. This is a really, really important question. I don't know if Les and Mustafa, if you want to respond to this discrepancy between the leadership and the people.
Well, that's certainly true, but we can't generalize about the people. The people in general are in one sense sharply divided and for the most part totally withdrawn from the issue. As far as we can tell, they're silent, perhaps because they're too frightened to say anything. And that's partly due to the Palestine Exception being operationalized through a campaign of psychological warfare, making people frightened that they'll be accused of A, B, or C. We know what that list is. And within our focus here is the university context, where our activities have effectively revealed those sharp divisions, where perhaps it's a small minority, but significant minority, that regularly post abusive comments at our efforts to hold events, at our webinar publicity, and especially abuse directed at the OU Friends of Palestine, which is mainly students who have more social media outlets where they receive this abuse. So I think rather than generalize about what most people think, we should focus on that conflict whereby our efforts have revealed those sharp divisions, and in particular have elicited attempts at censorship by OU administrators. That's been a key focus of all our activities. With which, when we started to publicize our webinars, and with the help of some PhD students, at least one of them encountered a blockage by their faculty administrator in the graduate school saying, no, we can't post any material like this because it would make some students feel excluded. That's code for, it would make pro-Israel students perhaps feel uncomfortable, of course, at the expense of the pro-Palestine students who are thereby marginalized. So we're focusing on those kinds of efforts to suppress Palestine altogether from the electronic media internally of the OU. I think I'll stop there.
Could I just add something to that? Because I've just read a comment in the meeting chat from Ray Chatwin. I know Ray personally. He says the Palestinians are a greatly wrong people. Support for these initiatives seems to me at least to be entirely congruent with open university values, at least as these are stated, right? So there's the rub, right? The university has an explicit commitment to social justice. And then the question is unpacking that phrase, social justice, in terms of understanding to whom it applies, to whom it doesn't apply, the scope of application. Is it national, regional, global? What about global local entanglements, etc., etc.? So that's one thing. The other thing which complicates it even further is that in the university's EDI plan, there is an explicit commitment to decolonization, right? I think it's decolonizing the curriculum and possibly also decolonizing the university. So both DTC and DTU, I think, are flagged, and I could be wrong. Ray, I absolutely agree with you. Part of the work that we're trying to do, if not right at the center of the work, is focusing on what appears to be, one could say, a mismatch, or ostensibly we're reframing it as an exceptionalizing, right? So there are stated commitments to social justice, there are stated commitments to decolonization, but when Palestine is put under the spotlight in relation to those two issues, social justice and decolonization, things suddenly become, and to use the phrase which I'm sure we are all familiar with, becomes complicated. And we are trying to uncomplicate things through a process of, as Jasmine mentioned in his opening description, reversing the gaze and understanding settler colonialism not just as a historical phenomenon applying to North America, Australasia, etc., but as something that isn't an event, but rather is a structure, as Patrick Wolf wrote in his seminal essay, but is also one that involves local global entanglements, right? So what is going on here in this country, what is going on with our institution within this country, is entangled with what's going on historically and currently in the rest of the world.
Great, thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question or make a comment? We got a few more minutes in the meeting, so feel free to come up with something. Maybe we could do some unashamed self-promoting of our events. Oh no, thank you, Joanne Jordan, for keeping us from doing that. Thank you, Joanne, please.
Please excuse me because I joined your presentation a few minutes late, so I may have missed this. And there's no agenda to this question, but what's the evidence that the situation, and you've talked about the exceptionalization of Palestinian situation, how is that different from other responses that have taken place to what I consider to be a huge social injustice? You know, I can see instances of that over time. So what is it that is particularly different about how the OU is treating the ongoing situation in Palestine?
Do you mean other instances now, or other instances maybe in the previous decades?
Previous decades. I mean, well, having only joined the OU 6 years ago, I don't know what its response was to, I mean, you can tell from my accent I'm from Northern Ireland, right? So I don't know what its response was to any arguments to or for, you know, or to or against, for and against the different sides, to use an oversimplistic word, to the conflict in Ireland. But I know that generally speaking, at a societal level, that there were very, very clear lines of division in how people responded to it. So I'm not. I know that I'm not coming across as I'm hoping to. But what is it about? I can fully understand and endorse what you're doing, you know, but just don't know why the situation in Palestine is any. I mean, it's grotesque, but there have been other situations which are grotesque conflicts.
I understand what you mean. I think none of us were here during the height of the conflict, or whatever to call it, the war in Northern Ireland. So it would be interesting to ask old timers who were here then how they experienced the debate or suppression, and perhaps there was a Northern Ireland exception in that time. That would need some investigation. But today, so this isn't making a claim across history, it's making a claim that in the current period, at least, Palestine is certainly an exception, and maybe the only one that we know about.
Could I just add briefly to that? And I know Christina wants to come in, so I'm going to be very, very, very brief. I think your question is excellent, right? I mean, in my opinion. And I myself have thought about slightly different prior case study, if you want to use that language, case study, and that would be apartheid South Africa, right? Yeah. So, you know, is there a way to kind of like look into the Open University archive to see the kind of policy documents that were being circulated, the kind of communications that were being circulated by the administration, and what was its position? Was it both siding the narrative? Was it taking a, you know, pro-ANC stance, et cetera, right? Now, having said that, I think it's important to attend to similarities and differences, right? So I think I mean, South Africa is a very good example. You've given another excellent example in the issue of Northern Ireland and the conflict there. But there seems to be something very specific about what's going on in relation to this country's role in the formation of that settler-colonial project and its ongoing commitment as a now junior partner in relation to the maintenance of that project, if not its expansion, right? So I'm not suggesting that it's completely different, but I'm suggesting that it's not the same, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It absolutely does. And you've answered my question.
Delighted to hear it.
Or dealt with my musings about it. So thank you very much, both.
And I can just add also the financial ties play a big role. I think our financial investment of the UK in that project. Christina, please.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Joanne. I was just going to add that it becomes quite clear, actually, when you compare it to the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. And you can see all the initiatives that are taken by the university to support Ukrainian people. Straight away, a website is created, you know, for Ukrainian students and staff to support them. When we try to do something as an Open University Palestine Solidarity Group, we get pushbacks from complaints from colleagues who complain, and then the administration will tell us, hey, you can't use the OU's logo for this. So there's just massive differences in how support for Palestine is being received by the institution compared to any support for Ukraine.
And even worse, I mean, the OU did issue statements supporting Ukraine against Russia, but after October 7th, it issued a quite different statement, which we denounced as reproducing the dominant narrative of the US, UK, and Israeli governments. They of course, denied that, saying it was even-handed. But that just shows their racist colonial mentality, deeply embedded, probably within all university administrations.
I think we have reached the end of the time. I'm aware that people need to move on to the next talk. Thank you so much for being here and asking questions. And if you want to, watch some of our webinars that we have produced over the last 12, 13 months, I'm just going to share our YouTube channel. Really interesting stuff on there. Amazing speakers.
Yeah, we've had 6 webinars.
Yeah.
And watch, if you're new to this, watch the first one, because that's called The Israel-Palestine Issue Comes to the OU. It's about our confrontation with the administration at many levels, which of course pretended to be neutral, and as you'd expect, right? So we had to work our way through that pseudo-neutrality.
So all our webinars will be on this YouTube channel. If you're interested, feel free to share this around as well. Tomorrow, Christina kindly shared this. We have our next webinar on Islamophobia and the Palestine Exception. Feel free to join in. You need to register on Microsoft Teams. The link is there in the chat. Until then, have a nice rest of the day. I hope you have some exciting talks, and wishing you all decolonial power, love, and solidarity, and free Palestine.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Many thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.